Ambassador Lisa Martinez stared at the holographic message floating above her desk. The blue light made her coffee look strange, but she needed the caffeine to process what she was reading. The Galactic Council wanted to try human food. Not the fancy stuff served at diplomatic dinners, but real street food that regular people ate every day. "Jake, you need to see this," she called to Commander Jake Sullivan, who was reviewing security reports in the next room. The space station orbiting Earth buzzed with activity as usual, but this message changed everything. Jake walked in, his military boots clicking on the metal floor. He read the message twice before looking at Lisa with raised eyebrows. "They want hot dogs and hamburgers, are they serious?" "Dead serious," Lisa said, taking another sip of coffee. "Look at this part. They specifically ask for food that ordinary humans consume in their natural habitat. They want the real thing, not some fancy version." The message came from the Galactic Council of Zephyria Prime. For 50 years, humans had been part of the galactic community, but always as the junior members. Earth provided raw materials and basic labor, while other species shared advanced technology and scientific knowledge. This invitation felt different. It felt important. Dr. Amy Rodriguez entered the room carrying a tablet full of research data. Her lab coat looked wrinkled, which meant she had been working all night again. "I heard about the food request," she said. "We have a problem, a big problem." "What kind of problem?" Jake asked, already knowing he would not like the answer. Amy set her tablet on the desk and pulled up files about alien biology. "Most council species have completely different digestive systems. The Zephyrians process nutrients through their skin. The Clithians absorb liquid nutrients through their antennae. Some species have never eaten solid food in their entire evolutionary history." Lisa felt her stomach drop. "So, serving them human food could kill them," Amy finished. "Or make them very sick. We don't know enough about how their bodies work. Human food contains chemicals that might be toxic to them. Even something as simple as salt could be dangerous." The three humans sat in silence for a moment. Outside the window, Earth looked peaceful and blue. Down there, millions of people were eating lunch from food trucks and street vendors without thinking about it. They had no idea that their simple meals might become the center of galactic diplomacy. "Why would they ask for this if it's dangerous?" Jake wondered aloud. Amy shrugged. "Maybe they don't know it's dangerous, or maybe they're testing us. Some council members think humans are too primitive to handle important responsibilities." Lisa stood up and walked to the window. She could see transport ships coming and going from Earth's surface. Each one carried goods to different planets across the galaxy, but this was the first time anyone had asked for something uniquely human. "We can't say no," she said finally. "This is the biggest opportunity we've had since joining the council. If we refuse, they'll think we can't handle simple requests. If we agree and accidentally poison half the council, that's worse than refusing," Jake pointed out. Amy was already making notes on her tablet. "We need a team. Food experts, medical specialists, diplomats, and we need to research every single council species. Their biology, their dietary needs, what might hurt them." "How long do we have?" Lisa asked. Amy checked the message again. 6 weeks. They want to hold the event during the next council session." Jake laughed, but it was not a happy sound. 6 weeks to figure out how to safely feed 17 different alien species human street food. No pressure. Lisa made her decision. "Send a message to Earth Command. We need the best food scientists, chefs, and medical experts they can find. This is now a priority mission." "What kind of street food should we focus on?" Amy asked. The message doesn't specify the classics, Lisa said. Hot dogs, hamburgers, pizza, tacos, the foods that represent human culture around the world, but we need safe versions that won't hurt anyone. Jake was already thinking about security. We'll need medical teams standing by, equipment to handle alien emergencies, protocols for every possible scenario. I'll start researching council biology, Amy said. Maybe I can find ways to modify human food to make it safe for different species. The next few hours were busy. Messages flew between the space station and Earth. Scientists were pulled from other projects. The best street food chefs were contacted and briefed on the situation. Military medical teams prepared for the strangest mission of their careers. Lisa found herself staring at photos of Earth food trucks, simple vehicles that served simple food to simple people. Nothing fancy or complicated. Just humans feeding other humans the way they had for thousands of years. Now that simple tradition might change galactic relations forever. Ambassador, Jake said, interrupting her thoughts. I have Captain Tony Williams on the comm. He wants to know if we should prepare formal diplomatic meals instead. Something safer. Lisa shook her head. No. They asked for street food specifically. There's a reason for that. Maybe they want to understand how regular humans live. Maybe they're tired of fancy diplomatic dinners. Either way, we give them what they asked for. Even if it's risky? Especially because it's risky. That's what makes us human. We take chances. We try new things. We share what we have, even when it's not perfect. Amy looked up from her research. I've been thinking about this wrong. Instead of trying to make human food safe for aliens, maybe we should find out what each species can safely consume and create versions of human food using those ingredients. Like making a hamburger that tastes like a hamburger but uses ingredients that won't hurt a Clithian? Jake asked. Exactly. We keep the experience but change the chemistry. Lisa nodded. That could work, but we still need medical teams ready for anything. The meeting continued late into the night. Plans were made, teams were assembled, and research began. None of them knew if they were about to make history or create a diplomatic disaster, but they were going to try anyway. Because that's what humans do. They share their food, take risks, and hope for the best, even when the stakes are higher than they've ever been before. The Galactic Council wanted to try human street food. Lisa was determined to give them exactly that, no matter how complicated it became. Outside the window, Earth kept spinning. Down there, food trucks were getting ready for another day of serving simple meals to hungry people. Soon those same simple meals might feed beings from across the galaxy, if everything went according to plan. 3 days after the message arrived, Earth's best experts gathered in a conference room that smelled like coffee and stress. Lisa Martinez looked around the table at faces she had only seen in files before today. These people would either save humanity's reputation or destroy it completely. Chef Carlos Gutierrez sat at one end of the table, his hands stained with spices from years of working food trucks in Los Angeles. He looked uncomfortable in the clean government building, far from his usual world of street corners and hungry customers. I still don't understand why you need me, he said. I just cook food. I don't know anything about aliens. Dr. Nina Foster adjusted her glasses and pulled up a holographic display showing alien digestive systems. That's exactly why we need you. You understand food at a basic level, how flavors work together, how to make simple ingredients taste amazing. We can handle the science part. Lieutenant Colonel Beth Harper had been quiet since the meeting started, but now she spoke up. The logistics are going to be a nightmare. We need to transport ingredients, cooking equipment, and medical supplies across the galaxy. Everything has to work in different atmospheric conditions. Sergeant Matt Chen nodded from his seat near the door. He had been assigned to security, but his real job was keeping everyone alive if things went wrong. I've been reading about Zephyria Prime. The gravity is different. The air has more oxygen than Earth. Some of our equipment might not work the same way. Kelly Brooks, the paramedic specialist, was studying medical files on her tablet. Each alien species had different vital signs, different ways of showing distress, different medical needs. I'm going to need crash courses in 17 different types of emergency medicine, and we don't even know what food poisoning looks like in most of these species. Ryan Davis, the diplomatic interpreter, had the hardest job of all. He had to learn not just languages, but entire ways of thinking about food and culture. Some council members don't have words for concepts like taste or flavor, he explained. How do you describe a hamburger to someone who has never experienced eating for pleasure? Lisa looked around the table again. These people were risking their careers and possibly their lives for a chance to serve hot dogs to aliens. I know this seems impossible, she said. But Earth Command believes this is our chance to prove that humans belong in the galactic community, not as workers or suppliers, but as equals. Carlos laughed, but not in a mean way. Lady, I've been serving food to people who don't speak English for 20 years. How different can aliens be? Dr. Foster pulled up an image of a Clithian delegate. The insect-like creature had multiple eyes and antennae where a mouth should be. They absorb nutrients through those antennae. They've never chewed anything. They don't have taste buds as we understand them. Carlos stared at the image for a long moment. Okay, that's pretty different. The next few hours were spent going through each council species one by one. The Zephyrians looked almost human, but processed food through their skin. The crystalline Velithians absorbed nutrients through vibrations. The energy-based Luminians fed directly off light and radiation. The Thraxians are the biggest challenge, Dr. Foster explained, showing an image of a blob-like creature. Their entire digestive system is liquid-based. Everything has to be in liquid or gas form, or they can't process it. Kelly looked up from her medical research. What happens if we get this wrong? What are the symptoms of alien food poisoning? We don't know, Dr. Foster admitted. This has never been tried before. We're making educated guesses based on their known biology. Beth Harper was making lists of equipment and supplies. We'll need portable laboratories, emergency medical equipment for 17 species, cooking gear that works in alien environments, and backup plans for everything. Don't forget the food itself, Carlos added. Fresh ingredients don't travel well across space. We'll need to figure out how to keep everything fresh during a 3-week journey. Matt Chen was studying security protocols. What if someone gets sick during the event? How do we evacuate alien dignitaries from a space station? Do we even have medical facilities that can handle non-human patients? The questions kept coming, each one more complicated than the last. But slowly, a plan began to form. They would modify classic human street foods for each species. Carlos would work with Dr. Foster to create safe versions that still captured the essence of the original dishes. I have an idea, Carlos said suddenly. What if we don't try to make alien versions of human food? What if we make human versions of the experience of eating? Everyone looked confused, so he continued. Look, a hot dog isn't just meat and bread. It's the experience, the smell, the texture, the social aspect of eating with other people. Maybe we can create that experience using ingredients that are safe for each species. Dr. Foster's eyes lit up. Molecular gastronomy. We could break down the sensory experience of eating human food and recreate it using alien-safe components. Like making a hamburger that looks, smells, and feels like a hamburger but uses proteins and flavors that won't hurt a Zephyrian, Kelly said, starting to understand. Exactly, Carlos said. It's still a hamburger, just made with different ingredients. Beth Harper was already making new lists. We'll need specialized equipment for molecular cooking, chemical analyzers to make sure everything is safe, and probably a lot more medical backup than we originally planned. Ryan Davis was taking notes frantically. I'll need to learn how to explain concepts like crispy and juicy to species that have never experienced texture. The meeting continued late into the evening. Plans were made, responsibilities assigned, and timelines established. When it was over, everyone understood the magnitude of what they were attempting. One more thing, Lisa said, as people started to leave. This event will be broadcast across the galaxy. Every species in the Council will be watching. No pressure, but the future of human relations with the galactic community might depend on whether we can successfully serve alien hot dogs. Carlos gathered his notes and stood up. 20 years ago, I was just a guy with a food truck trying to make rent. Now I'm supposed to cook for aliens on live galactic television. He paused at the door. This is either going to be the best thing that ever happened to me, or the worst. Kelly Brooks was still studying medical files. I just realized something. If this works, we're not just serving food to aliens. We're introducing the concept of eating for pleasure to species that might have never experienced it. Dr. Foster nodded. We could be changing their entire understanding of nutrition and culture. Matt Chen checked his weapon one more time before leaving. Let's just hope we don't accidentally start a war over a bad taco. As the room emptied, Lisa remained behind, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, 17 alien species were waiting to try human street food. In 6 weeks, she would find out if this crazy plan would work, or if they were about to make the biggest mistake in human history. Dr. Amy Rodriguez had not slept in 36 hours. Her laboratory looked like a hurricane had hit it, with alien biology charts scattered across every surface and half-empty coffee cups growing cold on the equipment. She was trying to solve an impossible puzzle: how to make human food safe for beings that evolved on completely different worlds. The Zephyrians are the easiest, she muttered to herself, highlighting sections of a medical report. Their skin can process simple sugars and proteins, but anything too spicy could cause chemical burns. On the other side of the lab, Carlos Gutierrez was experimenting with something that barely looked like food. He had been working with molecular gastronomy equipment for 2 weeks, trying to create textures and flavors that had never existed before. Amy, come taste this, he called out, holding up a small cube that glowed faintly blue. She walked over, exhausted but curious. What is it supposed to be? A hamburger. Sort of. It has the protein structure of beef, but it's made from synthesized compounds that should be safe for Clithians. The flavor molecules are designed to trigger their chemical receptors the same way a real burger would affect human taste buds. Amy took a small bite. It tasted like a hamburger, but something was wrong. The texture was too smooth, and there was an aftertaste that reminded her of metal. It's close but not quite right. Carlos sighed and made notes on his tablet. That's the 15th version. I'm running out of safe compounds to work with. Across the room, Kelly Brooks was practicing with alien medical equipment. She had 17 different types of emergency devices spread across 3 tables, each one designed for a different species. The Velithian resonance stabilizer looked like a tuning fork crossed with a computer. The Luminian energy regulator was just a box of mirrors and crystals. "Kelly, can you come here for a minute?" Amy called out. "I need someone to test this Thraxian liquid pizza." Kelly set down a Zephyrian skin patch applicator and walked over. Amy handed her a glass filled with what looked like orange soup. "Remember, Thraxians can only process liquids. This contains all the flavor compounds and nutrients of pizza, but in liquid form." Kelly took a careful sip. Her face immediately twisted into a grimace. "It tastes like someone melted cheese and tomatoes and added, is that motor oil?" "Those are the lipid compounds," Amy explained. "Thraxians need them for proper nutrition. I know it tastes awful to humans, but their chemical receptors should interpret it as pleasant." "Should," Carlos repeated. "That's the problem with this whole project. Everything is should and might and probably. We're guessing about everything." Amy understood his frustration. Every species had different biology, different chemical needs, different ways of processing nutrients. What was food to one species could be poison to another, and they were trying to create a universal dining experience using human concepts that most aliens had never encountered. "Look at this," she said, pulling up a file on the Velithians. "They're crystalline beings. They don't eat food in any way. We understand. They absorb nutrients through harmonic vibrations. I've been trying to figure out how to make pizza that resonates at the right frequency." Carlos looked at the research data and shook his head. "This is insane. How do you make pizza sing?" "Very carefully," Amy said, "and with a lot of trial and error." The next few hours were spent in experimentation. Carlos worked on creating textures that felt familiar to humans but were safe for alien digestive systems. Amy analyzed every compound for potential toxicity. Kelly practiced emergency procedures until she could operate alien medical equipment in her sleep. Lieutenant Colonel Beth Harper arrived in the afternoon with news from the logistics team. "We have a problem," she announced, which had become her standard greeting over the past 2 weeks. "What now?" Amy asked, not looking up from her chemical analyzer. "Weight restrictions. The transport ship can only carry so much equipment. We have to choose between extra medical supplies and backup cooking equipment." Carlos stopped what he was doing. "We need the cooking equipment. If the primary systems fail, we can't make any food at all. And if someone has a medical emergency, we might not be able to save them," Kelly pointed out. Beth set down her tablet with the cargo manifest. "We're already over the weight limit. Something has to go." Amy looked around the laboratory at all their research and equipment. Weeks of work represented in every device and every formula. What if we combine things, make equipment that serves multiple purposes? "Like what?" Beth asked. "The chemical analyzers I'm using to test food safety. They could be modified to work as medical diagnostic equipment, too. Same basic technology, different software." Carlos was getting excited. "And the molecular gastronomy equipment could double as emergency medical devices. The resonance generators I'm using for Velithian food could probably be used to treat Velithian medical conditions." Kelly nodded. "It's risky, but it might work. We just need to make sure everyone knows how to use everything for multiple purposes." The conversation was interrupted by Ryan Davis rushing into the lab with his translator tablet. "We have a bigger problem," he said, breathing hard. "I just finished reviewing the cultural briefings for each council species. Some of them consider eating to be a private, almost sacred activity. Others view it as a purely mechanical process with no social component." "What does that mean for the event?" Amy asked. "It means we might be asking some species to do something they consider deeply personal or offensive. The Zephyrians, for example, typically process nutrients in isolation. Being watched while they eat could be seen as a violation of their privacy. Carlos sat down heavily in a chair. So we're not just trying to feed them safely. We're trying to navigate alien cultural taboos about food that we don't even understand. Gets worse, Ryan continued. The Luminians consider sharing food to be a form of intimate bonding. If we serve them in a group setting, they might interpret it as a marriage proposal to everyone present. Kelly laughed. But it was the kind of laugh that happens when things become too absurd to take seriously. So we could accidentally marry ourselves to energy beings while trying to serve them cotton candy. This is exactly the kind of detail that could destroy everything, Beth said. One cultural misunderstanding and the whole event becomes a diplomatic disaster. Amy stood up and looked at all the research they had done. Weeks of work, thousands of hours of preparation, all to serve street food to aliens. Maybe we're overthinking this, she said finally. How so? Carlos asked. Street food isn't just about nutrition. It's about community. It's about sharing simple pleasures with other people. Maybe the cultural differences don't matter as much as the basic human gesture of offering food to someone. Ryan was making notes on his translator. You think the act of sharing food might be universal, even if the cultural context is different? I think humans have been sharing food with strangers for thousands of years. It's one of the most basic ways we show hospitality and friendship. Maybe that translates across species lines. Kelly was checking her medical equipment one more time. There's only one way to find out, and we'll have medical teams standing by in case we're wrong. Carlos looked at his experimental alien food samples. Some looked recognizable, others looked like science experiments gone wrong. In 3 weeks, we're going to find out if human street food can bring together the most diverse collection of species in the galaxy. Or if we're about to poison half the Galactic Council on live television, Beth added helpfully. Amy smiled. For the first time in days. Either way, it's going to be interesting. The laboratory fell quiet, except for the hum of equipment and the scratch of pencils on paper. Outside, preparations continued across multiple Earth facilities. Ships were loaded, equipment was tested, and backup plans were made for backup plans. In 3 weeks, they would discover whether human food culture could survive contact with alien biology and customs. But tonight they had work to do. The diplomatic vessel Earth's Pride felt cramped with all the extra equipment loaded for the mission. Chef Carlos Gutierrez stood in what used to be the ship's dining hall, now converted into a mobile kitchen that looked like something from a science fiction movie. Molecular gastronomy equipment hummed next to traditional cooking tools, while chemical analyzers monitored everything for alien safety. This is either the most advanced kitchen in the galaxy or the most expensive way to make hot dogs, Carlos said to himself, testing the gravity-adjustable cooking surfaces for the 100th time. Dr. Amy Rodriguez was in the laboratory next door, running final tests on their alien food samples. Each container was labeled with both human food names and alien species designations. Zephyrian Safe Pizza sat next to Clithian-compatible hot dogs. Some containers held liquids, others contained what looked like glowing crystals, and a few seemed to be filled with nothing but colored gas. Amy, the Thraxian liquid taco is separating again, Carlos called through the connecting door. Whatever you did to keep it stable isn't working in zero gravity. Amy floated over to check the container. The orange liquid had indeed separated into layers of different colors, none of which looked like anything a human would want to eat. The molecular bonds are weaker in microgravity. I'll need to adjust the stabilizing compounds. Captain Tony Williams's voice came over the ship's communication system. All crew to stations. We're approaching the Zephyria system. Artificial gravity will be adjusted to match planetary conditions in 30 minutes. Kelly Brooks was in the medical bay, surrounded by enough alien emergency equipment to stock a small hospital. She had spent the 3-week journey learning to operate devices designed for 17 different species, most of which looked more like art sculptures than medical instruments. The Velithian resonance chamber is still giving me trouble, she said to Lieutenant Colonel Beth Harper, who was checking inventory lists. I can get it to work, but I'm not sure I understand what it's actually doing. As long as you can keep them alive if something goes wrong, that's enough, Beth replied. We don't need to understand alien medicine perfectly. We just need to stabilize them until their own medical teams can take over. Sergeant Matt Chen was running security checks throughout the ship. The diplomatic mission was technically peaceful, but they were carrying enough experimental food and medical equipment to stock a small research station. All security systems are green, he reported. No issues with the cargo. Ryan Davis was in his quarters, making final notes on cultural protocols. The 3-week journey had given him time to study each council species in detail, but he still felt unprepared for the complexity of interspecies communication during a meal. How do you explain the concept of comfort food to a species that has never experienced emotional attachment to nutrition? He wondered aloud, reviewing his notes on the Luminians. The ship's gravity shifted as they entered Zephyria Prime's gravity field. Carlos felt his stomach lurch as the artificial gravity adjusted. In the kitchen, several of his carefully prepared samples wobbled in their containers. Gravity change complete, Captain Williams announced. All teams prepare for orbital insertion. Amy rushed between the laboratory and kitchen, checking that all their equipment was still functioning properly. The molecular gastronomy devices were particularly sensitive to gravity changes, and several needed recalibration. Carlos, the resonance frequency for the Velithian pizza is off by 12%, she called out. The gravity change affected the harmonic modulators. Carlos was already adjusting settings on equipment that looked more like musical instruments than cooking tools. I never thought I'd be tuning pizza like a guitar, he muttered. Through the ship's windows, Zephyria Prime came into view. The planet looked similar to Earth from a distance, but Amy knew the similarities were only surface. Deep. The atmosphere had different gases, the gravity was slightly higher, and the dominant species had evolved from completely different origins. First time seeing an alien planet? Kelly asked, floating over to join Amy at the window. First time. Going to one? Amy replied. I've studied them from Earth, but this is different. In a few hours, we're going to be serving human food to beings that evolved on that world. Nervous? Terrified, Amy admitted. We've done everything we can to make this safe, but we're still guessing about so much. Alien biology is complicated, and we only have basic information about most species. Kelly checked her medical equipment one more time. That's why I'm here. If something goes wrong, we'll deal with it. The ship's communication system crackled to life with an incoming message from Zephyria Prime. Ryan rushed to translate the complex diplomatic language, but the basic message was simple. The Galactic Council was ready for the cultural exchange event. They're excited, Ryan reported to the rest of the team. Apparently, word has spread throughout the Council about this event. Some species have never heard of eating for pleasure before. Carlos paused in his equipment checks. What do you mean, eating for pleasure? Most galactic species view food as pure nutrition, Ryan explained. They consume what they need to survive and nothing more. The idea of eating something because it tastes good or makes you feel happy is completely foreign to them. So we're Not just serving them street food, Amy realized. We're introducing an entirely new concept to their civilization. Beth Harper was coordinating with the Zephyrian ground control for their landing approach. Docking procedures will begin in 2 hours. All equipment needs to be secured and ready for transport. The next 2 hours were a blur of final preparations. Carlos ran through his cooking procedures one more time, making sure he could prepare safe versions of classic human street foods using the modified equipment. Amy double-checked every formula and compound for potential alien toxicity. Kelly tested communication protocols with alien medical teams. "Remember," Lisa Martinez said, over the ship's intercom, "this event will be broadcast to every member species of the Galactic Council. Billions of beings across the galaxy will be watching us serve hot dogs and hamburgers to their leaders." "No pressure," Carlos said, but he was smiling. Despite all the complexity and danger, he was excited to share his passion for cooking with beings from other worlds. As the ship approached the docking station, the team gathered in the main corridor. Each person carried equipment that could determine the future of human relations with the galaxy. Food containers, medical devices, translation equipment, and emergency supplies filled the corridor. "Whatever happens down there," Lisa said, "we're representing not just Earth, but the idea that humans have something valuable to contribute to galactic civilization. Our food, our culture, our way of bringing people together through shared meals." The docking clamps engaged with a metallic thud that echoed through the ship. Outside the airlock, they could hear the sounds of the alien space station. Different atmospheres being equalized, alien voices speaking in languages that sounded like music or mathematics. "Final equipment check," Beth ordered. Everyone verified that their gear was secure and functional. Carlos looked at his collection of modified cooking equipment and alien-safe food samples. "I've been cooking for humans my whole life. Time to find out if good food really is universal." The airlock door opened with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Beyond it lay a corridor filled with beings from across the galaxy, all waiting to experience something that had never been tried before. The first human street food festival in galactic history was about to begin, and none of them were entirely sure what would happen next. The Galactic Council chamber was unlike anything the humans had ever seen. The room itself seemed to breathe, with walls that shifted color based on the emotional state of the occupants. 17 different environmental zones accommodated the various species' needs, some areas filled with methane gas, others with crystalline structures that hummed with harmonic frequencies, and one section that seemed to be made entirely of contained energy fields. Ambassador Lisa Martinez stood at the center of it all, watching as council members took their positions. The Zephyrian Prime Minister looked almost human, except for the silver tint to their skin and the way they seemed to shimmer slightly in the light. The Clithian delegates resembled giant praying mantises with multiple eyes and antennae that twitched constantly, testing the air around them. "They're all staring at us," Carlos whispered to Dr. Amy Rodriguez as he set up his mobile kitchen in the designated area. The cooking station looked tiny compared to the massive chamber, but it contained more advanced food preparation technology than most restaurants on Earth. "They're curious," Amy replied, checking her handheld analyzer for the 100th time. "Most of them have never seen food being prepared. Their species either absorb nutrients automatically or consume pre-processed nutrition paste." Ryan Davis was having conversations with council members through his translation device, trying to explain concepts that had no equivalent in their languages. The Velithians want to know why humans voluntarily consume matter that provides no structural benefit to their crystalline matrix, he reported. I don't think they understand that we're not made of crystal. What did you tell them? Lisa asked. That humans eat for emotional satisfaction as well as nutrition. I'm not sure the translation came through correctly. They keep asking what emotions taste like. Kelly Brooks was setting up medical monitoring stations around the chamber. Each council member wore a small device that would track their vital signs during the food tasting. The problem was that vital signs for 17 different species looked completely different. What was normal for a Luminian energy being would be a medical emergency for a Zephyrian. Baseline readings are established, she announced. I'm getting normal readings from everyone, though I'm still not sure what normal means for half these species. The Thraxian delegate was the most unusual sight in the chamber. They appeared to be a large blob of translucent blue liquid contained within a mobile tank. Tubes and filters connected to the tank, and occasionally the liquid would shift and swirl in patterns that might have been communication. How exactly are we supposed to serve liquid food to a being that is liquid? Carlos asked, staring at the Thraxian setup. Very carefully, Amy said. Their tank has feeding ports designed for liquid nutrients. We just have to make sure our liquid taco doesn't contaminate their system. Carlos had spent 3 weeks learning to prepare food for beings that didn't eat the way humans understood eating. Now, faced with the actual aliens, he realized how inadequate his preparation had been. The Luminians don't even have mouths, he said, watching the energy beings float in their containment fields. How do they consume anything? They absorb energy directly, Amy explained. The cotton candy we prepared for them has been converted into pure glucose energy. They should be able to absorb it through direct contact. The council chamber filled with sounds that hurt human ears. Harmonic vibrations from the Velithians, subsonic communications from species without vocal cords, and electromagnetic patterns that the translation devices converted into barely comprehensible words. Council members are expressing anticipation, Ryan reported, listening to the cascade of alien languages. Also confusion, concern, and what I think might be excitement, though it's hard to tell with some species. Lisa stepped forward to address the assembled council. Her words were immediately translated into 17 different communication methods, including light patterns, chemical releases, and harmonic frequencies. Honored council members, she began, we present to you the foods that nourish not just our bodies, but our communities. These simple meals represent thousands of years of human culture, shared on street corners and in gathering places across our world. The Zephyrian Prime Minister responded with a series of clicks and whistles that the translator converted to standard galactic. We are prepared to experience this pleasure eating that humans practice. Our medical teams stand ready. That's reassuring, Kelly muttered, double-checking her emergency equipment. Carlos began the demonstration with the simplest item, a modified hamburger designed for the Zephyrians. The burger looked normal from the outside, but Amy had replaced every ingredient with compounds that could be safely processed through Zephyrian skin. This is a hamburger, Lisa explained as Carlos held up the modified food. Humans typically consume it by biting and chewing, but we have adapted it for your nutritional processing methods. The Zephyrian delegate approached cautiously. Instead of taking the burger in their hands, they pressed their palm against it. The humans watched in fascination as the food was absorbed directly through the alien's skin, leaving behind only trace minerals. Remarkable, the Zephyrian said after a moment. The chemical compounds create sensations that are not related to nutritional content. Is this what humans call taste? It's one part of taste, Lisa replied. There are also textures, temperatures, and combinations of flavors that create different experiences. The Clithian delegates were next. Carlos had prepared what looked like hot dogs, but made from protein compounds that could be absorbed through their antennae. The insect-like beings approached the food with scientific curiosity, their antennae twitching as they analyzed the chemical composition. "Warning!" one of the Clithians announced in their musical language. "This substance contains compounds that trigger unusual neural responses. Proceeding with consumption." The Clithian delegate touched their antennae to the modified hot dog. Immediately, their entire body began to vibrate in what the translation device identified as extreme pleasure. "Status report," Kelly called out, monitoring the Clithian's vital signs. "Heart rate elevated but within safe parameters. Neural activity is enthusiastic." "More," the Clithian delegate demanded, a word that needed no translation. "This experience—" "We require additional samples." Amy was frantically checking her notes. "I didn't expect that strong a reaction. The flavor compounds must be triggering pleasure responses in their nervous system." The other Clithian delegates crowded around the food station, their antennae reaching toward the remaining hot dogs. Carlos had to step back as 17 different species suddenly became very interested in human street food. "Order," the Zephyrian Prime Minister called out, but even they sounded curious about the remaining food samples. The Volithians approached the pizza station with their characteristic harmonic humming. Carlos had spent weeks learning to create pizza that resonated at frequencies that their crystalline bodies could absorb as nutrition. "Pizza," Lisa announced, as the crystalline beings positioned themselves around the specially tuned food. A combination of bread, cheese, and vegetables that humans often share in social settings. The Volithians began to hum in harmony with the pizza's resonance frequency. As they absorbed the harmonic nutrition, their crystal bodies began to glow with shifting colors. The sound they made was beautiful, like a choir of living musical instruments. "They're harmonizing with the food," Amy said in wonder. "I didn't know they could do that." "Neither did we," admitted the Volithian spokesperson, their voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "This nutritional resonance creates joy frequencies that we have not experienced before." Carlos looked around the chamber as more species approached his food stations. The Thraxian was already absorbing the liquid taco through their feeding ports, swirling in patterns that suggested satisfaction. The Luminians were tentatively touching the energy-converted cotton candy, their normally dim forms brightening as they absorbed the glucose energy. "This is working," Lisa said quietly to her team. "They're actually enjoying it." "Define working," Kelly replied, watching as 17 different sets of vital signs registered readings she had never seen before. Half of them are showing neurological activity that's off the charts. But the sounds in the chamber were unmistakably positive. Species that had never experienced eating for pleasure were discovering that food could be more than just nutrition. The chamber filled with harmonics, vibrations, electromagnetic patterns, and sounds that the translation devices identified as variations of satisfaction, pleasure, and requests for more. "I think," Amy said, watching a Luminian being glow brighter than she had ever seen, "we might have just changed galactic civilization." Carlos was already preparing second servings for the species that were asking for more. 20 years of cooking on Earth, and the best reviews I've ever gotten are from aliens. The event was being broadcast across the galaxy, but for the moment, the humans forgot about the cameras and the diplomatic implications. They were too busy watching beings from across the universe discover the simple pleasure of a good meal, shared with others. It was, Lisa realized, the most human thing they could have done. Chaos erupted in the council chamber when the Luminian delegate began glowing so brightly that 3 other species had to shield their optical sensors. Kelly Brooks ran toward the energy being with her modified medical scanner, trying to determine if this was a normal response or a medical emergency. "Luminian vital signs are spiking," she called out over the growing noise in the chamber. "Energy output is 3 times their baseline. I don't know if this is good or bad." The Luminian in question was floating near the ceiling, pulsing with colors that hurt human eyes to look at directly. Through the translation device, their communication came across as pure joy mixed with something like euphoria. "Sweet energy absorption creates unprecedented pleasure frequencies," the Luminian broadcast to the entire chamber. "Request immediate additional glucose energy sources. This sensation requires continuation." Dr. Amy Rodriguez was frantically checking her chemical analysis of the cotton candy she had prepared for the Luminians. "The glucose conversion rate is higher than I calculated. They're absorbing energy faster than their normal feeding cycle." "Is that dangerous?" Lisa Martinez asked, watching as 2 more Luminians began glowing brighter after consuming their cotton candy portions. "I don't know," Amy admitted. "We have no data on Luminian energy overdose. This is completely uncharted territory." Meanwhile, the Clithian delegates had discovered that they could share flavor experiences through their antennae. 3 of them had linked together around a single hot dog, creating a feedback loop of pleasure responses that made them vibrate in synchronized patterns. "Clithian neurological activity is off the charts," Kelly reported, trying to monitor multiple species at once. "Their pleasure centers are more active than I've ever seen in any biological organism." Carlos was trying to keep up with demands for more food while monitoring the reactions of each species. The Volithians had begun harmonizing so loudly that the chamber's acoustic dampeners were struggling to contain the sound. Their crystalline bodies glowed with internal light as they absorbed the pizza's harmonic resonance. "The Volithians are creating a resonance cascade," Amy warned. "If they keep harmonizing like this, they might shatter." "Shatter?" Carlos repeated, pausing in his food preparation. "They're crystal beings. Too much harmonic vibration could cause structural damage to their bodies." But the Volithians showed no signs of stopping. If anything, they were harmonizing more intensely, creating complex musical patterns that seemed to incorporate the flavor frequencies of the pizza. This harmonic nutrition creates geometric pleasure matrices beyond our previous experience. Their spokesperson managed to communicate between harmonic bursts. "We require immediate cultural exchange protocols for obtaining additional resonance pizza." The Thraxian delegate was having their own unique reaction to the liquid taco. Their normally blue liquid form had taken on swirls of orange and green, creating patterns that their species used to express extreme satisfaction. The tank containing them was vibrating with what could only be described as happiness. "Liquid flavor compounds create unprecedented chemical euphoria," the Thraxian announced, their liquid forms spinning in delighted spirals. "Our species has never experienced nutrition-based pleasure. This changes everything about our understanding of consumption." Kelly was running between species, trying to monitor vital signs that ranged from normal to completely unprecedented. "The Zephyrians are absorbing food through their skin faster than they normally process nutrients. 3 Clithians are in some kind of pleasure trance, and I don't even know what normal looks like for half these species." "Are any of them in danger?" Lisa asked, watching the chamber fill with the sights and sounds of alien beings discovering the pleasure of eating. That's the problem, Kelly replied, checking another set of readings. I can't tell the difference between dangerous and just really, really happy. Ryan Davis was trying to translate the increasingly excited communications from the council members. Multiple species were talking at once, using their various communication methods to express concepts that had never existed in their languages before. They're all asking for more, he reported, but they're also trying to understand what's happening to them. Some species are having trouble processing the concept of voluntary consumption for emotional satisfaction. The chamber's environmental systems were struggling to keep up with the unusual activity levels. The air recyclers worked overtime to process the chemical emissions from excited alien metabolisms, while the gravity generators adjusted constantly to accommodate species that were moving in ways they normally didn't. Carlos, how much more food do we have? Lisa asked, watching council members who had finished their portions staring longingly at the preparation area. I prepared enough for one serving per delegate, Carlos replied. I didn't expect them to want seconds, or thirds, or to be this enthusiastic about everything. The Luminian energy cascade is getting worse, Amy warned, watching as 5 Luminians now glowed bright enough to light the entire chamber. If they keep absorbing glucose at this rate, they might overload their energy containment systems. But before Kelly could respond to the potential medical emergency, something unexpected happened. The Luminian who had been glowing brightest suddenly began to dim, settling into a gentle, warm light that seemed more relaxed than their usual energy state. Status report, Kelly called out, scanning the Luminian with her medical devices. Energy absorption has stabilized, the Luminian responded, their communication now calm and peaceful. The glucose euphoria phase has concluded. What remains is satisfaction. We believe humans call this feeling. It is pleasant to continue experiencing. The same thing began happening with other species. The Clithians' pleasure vibrations slowed to a gentle hum. The Volithians' harmonizing shifted from chaotic excitement to a peaceful musical pattern. The Zephyrians' skin stopped shimmering and settled into a soft, warm glow. They're coming down from whatever high they were experiencing, Amy observed, but they're not going back to their baseline states. They're settling into something new. What kind of something new? Lisa asked. I think, Kelly said, studying the vital signs from all 17 species. They're experiencing what humans call contentment, the pleasure of a good meal shared with others. The chamber gradually quieted as the council members settled into their new post-meal states. But instead of returning to their formal diplomatic positions, they remained clustered around the food preparation area, apparently reluctant to end the experience. This changes our understanding of nutrition, social interaction, and cultural exchange, the Zephyrian Prime Minister announced. We request formal procedures for incorporating this pleasure eating into future diplomatic protocols. Our crystalline matrices have been permanently altered by harmonic nutrition resonance, a Volithian delegate added. We require immediate establishment of cultural exchange programs with human food preparation specialists. Carlos looked around at the assembled aliens, all of whom were staring at him with expressions that transcended species barriers. They were all, unmistakably, hoping for more food. I think, he said quietly to his team, we might have accidentally created the galaxy's first food addicts. Is that good or bad? Kelly asked. Amy was already making notes for her report. It's definitely going to be complicated. Lisa looked around the chamber at 17 different species who had just discovered that eating could be about more than survival. They had introduced the concept of comfort food to civilizations that had never imagined such a thing could exist. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said to her team, "I think we just changed the galaxy." The only question now was whether they had changed it for the better or created complications that would last for generations. But as she watched a Clithian delegate carefully examining a leftover piece of hot dog with something approaching reverence, she suspected they were about to find out very quickly. The emergency session began 3 hours after the food tasting ended, but the council chamber still hummed with residual harmonics from the Velithians and excited chemical emissions from the Clithians. Ambassador Lisa Martinez sat in the human delegation area, watching as 17 different species tried to process what had just happened to them. "The first item on the emergency agenda," announced the Zephyrian Prime Minister, whose skin still held traces of the warm glow from their hamburger experience, "is the classification of what humans call pleasure eating and its implications for galactic civilization." Dr. Amy Rodriguez was furiously taking notes on her tablet while monitoring the ongoing biological responses of the council members. "They're all still showing elevated levels of satisfaction chemicals," she whispered to Lisa. "Whatever we did to them, it's not wearing off." The Clithian chief delegate approached the speaking platform with movements that seemed more fluid than before the meal. Their antennae twitched in patterns that Ryan Davis's translator was having trouble interpreting. "The Clithian Collective wishes to formally request the establishment of a permanent human culinary cultural exchange program," the delegate announced. "The neurological experiences created by hot dog consumption have revealed sensory capabilities we did not know our species possessed." Seconded by the Velithian Crystal Council, harmonized the Velithian spokesperson, their bodies still glowing, faintly from the pizza resonance. "Harmonic nutrition has created new geometric patterns in our consciousness matrices. We require immediate access to human food preparation knowledge." Lisa exchanged glances with her team. What had started as a simple cultural demonstration was rapidly becoming something much bigger. "The Thraxian Fluid Collective concurs," bubbled the liquid being from their tank. "Liquid flavor compounds have introduced chemical complexity to our existence that we wish to explore further. We formally request human dietary consultants for our homeworld." Carlos looked around the chamber with a mixture of pride and panic. "Did I just accidentally become the most important chef in galactic history?" "Looks like it," Kelly replied, still monitoring alien vital signs that remained elevated in what appeared to be sustained happiness. The Luminian delegate floated forward, their energy form now a warm golden color instead of their usual pale blue. "The Luminian Energy Collective has experienced glucose-based euphoria that exceeded our normal energy absorption patterns. We request immediate establishment of cotton candy production facilities on 17 Luminian colony worlds." "Cotton. Candy production facilities," Amy repeated quietly. "On 17 worlds. For energy beings." "The logistical implications alone are staggering," added Lieutenant Colonel Beth Harper, who was already calculating shipping requirements for feeding alien populations human street food. But the most significant intervention came from an unexpected source. The Philosophical Council, a group of elderly representatives from the galaxy's most ancient civilizations, had remained silent during the food tasting. Now their spokesperson, a being that looked like living shadow, floated to the center of the chamber. "The Ancient Council recognizes a fundamental shift in galactic consciousness," the shadow being announced in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Humans have introduced concepts of experiential consumption and emotional nutrition that challenge our understanding of civilization itself. The chamber fell silent. The Philosophical Council rarely spoke during regular sessions, and when they did, their words carried enormous weight across all member species. For millions of years, galactic civilizations have pursued efficiency in all things. Nutrition as pure energy transfer, communication as data exchange, existence as optimized survival. Humans have demonstrated that inefficiency can be pleasant. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. They hadn't just served food to aliens, they had challenged the fundamental philosophy that governed galactic civilization. The implications extend beyond nutrition, the shadow being continued. If consumption can be performed for pleasure rather than necessity, what other aspects of existence might be enhanced through experiential rather than efficient approaches? "What are they saying?" Carlos whispered to Ryan, who was frantically working with his translation device. "I think," Ryan replied slowly, "they're saying we might have accidentally started a philosophical revolution." The Zephyrian Prime Minister called for order as excited communications erupted across the chamber. "The Council recognizes the significance of this development. However, we must address practical concerns. Several member species are requesting immediate access to human food sources. This creates economic, logistical, and cultural challenges." "Economic challenges?" Amy asked. Beth Harper was already running calculations on her tablet. If even half the Council species want regular access to human street food, we're talking about interstellar supply chains, specialized production facilities, and training. Programs for alien-safe food preparation. The infrastructure requirements would be enormous. The Galactic Trade Commission will need to establish new categories for pleasure goods versus necessity goods, announced a delegate from the merchant species. Current trade laws do not account for voluntary consumption of non-essential nutrients. Furthermore, added the Clithian delegate, the neurological effects of pleasure eating may require new medical classifications and safety protocols. Several of our species experienced consciousness alterations that were unprecedented. Kelly looked up from her medical readings. "I'm still showing elevated satisfaction chemicals in all species that consumed food. Whatever neurological changes occurred, they appear to be lasting." "Is that dangerous?" Lisa asked. "I don't think so," Kelly replied. "But we're in completely uncharted territory. We've never seen sustained happiness states in these species before." The discussion continued for hours as council members debated the implications of pleasure eating for galactic society. Some species worried about the cultural disruption of introducing unnecessary consumption. Others were concerned about the economic impact of restructuring trade to include pleasure goods. But underlying all the practical concerns was a more fundamental question. If eating could be about pleasure instead of survival, what other human concepts might change how alien civilizations understood existence itself? "The humans have introduced chaos into our ordered civilization," declared a delegate from the mechanistic gear-turner species. "Pleasure-based consumption serves no logical purpose and wastes resources that could be allocated more efficiently. Yet the chaos produces satisfaction," countered the Volithian spokesperson. "Our harmonic matrices have never resonated with such complex beauty frequencies. Perhaps efficiency is not the highest goal of existence." Carlos found himself at the center of a philosophical debate that spanned multiple star systems. "I just wanted to serve good food to people," he said quietly. "I didn't mean to start a revolution." "Revolutionary or not," Lisa said, watching the continued discussions among the council members. "We need to figure out how to handle this. Half the galaxy is going to want human street food, and the other half is going to consider it a threat to cosmic order. The Galactic Council calls for a formal investigation into the long-term implications of pleasure eating, the Prime Minister announced. Dr. Amy Rodriguez of Earth will lead a joint research committee to study the biological and cultural effects of human food on galactic species. Amy's tablet nearly slipped from her hands. A joint research committee? I'm going to be studying alien reactions to street food for the rest of my career. The Council also establishes the Department of Experiential Nutrition, the Prime Minister continued, with Chef Carlos Gutierrez as Chief Cultural Food Consultant. Chief Cultural Food Consultant, Carlos repeated. My mother is never going to believe this. As the emergency session concluded, the council members were still reluctant to leave the chamber. Many lingered near the food preparation area, apparently hoping for additional samples or just wanting to extend the experience of their first pleasure meal. What have we done? Lisa asked, watching alien dignitaries who normally maintained strict diplomatic protocols clustering together like friends after a good dinner. I think, Amy said, studying the continued elevated happiness readings from 17 different species. We've made them human. Just a little bit. Is that good? Amy watched a Clithian delegate carefully examining the molecular gastronomy equipment with obvious fascination while a Volithian hummed a gentle harmony that seemed to incorporate pizza frequencies. Ask me in a few years, she said, when we find out whether the galaxy can handle learning to enjoy things just because they feel good. Outside the chamber, news of the human street food event was already spreading across the galaxy at faster-than-light speeds. Soon, billions of beings would learn that there was an alternative to purely efficient existence. The question was whether galactic civilization was ready for the beautiful chaos that humans called pleasure. 6 months after the Great Tasting, Ambassador Lisa Martinez stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Galactic Food Cultural Center, watching cargo ships arrive from across the galaxy. Each ship carried ingredients, equipment, or personnel for what had become the most unlikely diplomatic success in human history. The Clithian agricultural shipment just docked at Bay 7, reported Lieutenant Colonel Beth Harper, who had somehow become the galaxy's first director of interspecies food logistics. They're bringing modified grain that their scientists developed specifically for making human-style bread that their species can safely consume. Through the massive windows, Lisa could see food trucks modified for alien environments. A Zephyrian-operated pizza cart had specially designed surfaces for absorbing food through skin contact. A Volithian food vendor created harmonic resonance meals that sang while customers ate them. The Thraxian liquid food station looked more like a chemistry lab than a restaurant, but the constant stream of customers proved its popularity. I never imagined this, Chef Carlos Gutierrez said, joining Lisa at the window. He now wore the formal robes of the Chief Galactic Cultural Food Consultant, though he still preferred his old food truck apron underneath. When I started cooking on the streets of Los Angeles, I thought the biggest challenge would be making rent. Now I'm training alien chefs across 17 star systems. Dr. Amy Rodriguez approached with her daily report, though she looked more relaxed than she had in months. The Luminian cotton candy addiction crisis has been resolved, she announced. We've established glucose energy stations on their major colonies, and their energy consumption has stabilized. No more Luminians glowing bright enough to serve as emergency lighting. What about the Volithian harmonic pizza situation? Lisa asked. 3 new crystal cities have been built specifically around pizza resonance chambers, Amy replied. Their entire culture is reorganizing around harmonic food experiences. They've even developed new architectural styles based on acoustic properties for optimal dining. Kelly Brooks emerged from the medical center carrying a tablet full of health reports. As the galaxy's first director of pleasure-eating medical safety, she had dealt with everything from Clithian flavor overdoses to Thraxian liquid food poisoning. "All species reports are green," she said. "We've had no serious medical incidents in over a month. Everyone's learned their limits." "Any word from the Philosophical Council?" Lisa asked. Ryan Davis, now the official translator for food-related cultural concepts, nodded from his communication station. "They've issued their final report on the human pleasure revolution. Official conclusion: the introduction of experiential consumption has created measurable improvements in happiness, social cohesion, and creative thinking across all participating species." Lisa smiled as she watched a group of young Clithians learning to operate a modified hot dog cart under Carlos's supervision. Their antennae twitched with excitement as they practiced the careful chemical balance needed to create safe hot dogs for their species. "The economic impact reports came in this morning," Beth added. "Pleasure food trade is now the third largest economic sector in the galaxy. 17 species have retrained their agricultural systems to produce ingredients for foods they never would have imagined eating a year ago. The transformation had been remarkable to witness. Species that had consumed purely functional nutrition for millions of years were now developing complex food cultures. The mechanical gear-turner species, who had initially opposed pleasure eating as illogical, had created the galaxy's most precise molecular gastronomy techniques. They approached cooking with the same engineering precision they applied to everything else, resulting in food that was both mathematically perfect and surprisingly delicious. "The best part," Carlos said, watching a mixed group of alien species sharing a meal at one of the center's communal dining areas, "is how they're eating together now. Before this, each species had their own nutrition areas, their own protocols, their own separate everything. Now look at them." Lisa followed his gaze to see a Zephyrian, 2 Clithians, and a contained Thraxian sharing a table designed to accommodate all their different feeding methods. They were communicating in a mixture of languages, gestures, and harmonic patterns while enjoying modified versions of hamburgers, pizza, and liquid tacos. "Dr. Rodriguez," came an announcement over the communication system, "please report to Laboratory 7. The Luminian delegation has questions about ice cream." "Ice cream?" Amy muttered, gathering her equipment. "6 months ago, I was studying basic alien biology. Now I'm a galactic expert on frozen dairy products for energy beings." "How are things on Earth?" Kelly asked, as Amy headed toward the lab. "Complicated," Lisa replied. "Half the planet is proud that human food culture is spreading across the galaxy. The other half is worried that we're going to run out of good street food because aliens are requesting Earth chefs for colony worlds." "Are we running out?" Carlos asked with concern. "No, but we're having to train a lot more people very quickly. Earth's first interstellar culinary academy graduated 300 alien cuisine specialists last month. Applications for next year are coming from every human continent." The communication system crackled again with an incoming message from the Galactic Council. Ryan answered and listened for several minutes before turning to the group with a grin. "Official announcement from the Council," he said. "They're establishing permanent food cultural exchange centers on 50 major worlds across the galaxy. Each center will be staffed by human culinary specialists and local chefs trained in cross-species food preparation." 50 centers, Carlos repeated. "That's a lot of street food." "It gets better," Ryan continued. "They're also creating the first galactic festival of foods. Every species will contribute their traditional nutrition methods, modified for safe consumption by other species. It's going to be held here, on this station, next year. Lisa felt a surge of pride mixed with amazement. A simple invitation to share human street food had evolved into something that was changing how the entire galaxy understood community, pleasure, and cultural exchange. "There's one more thing," Ryan added. "The council voted to make this day, the anniversary of the Great Tasting, an official galactic holiday. They're calling it Unity Through Flavor Day." "A galactic holiday," Kelly said, "because we served hot dogs to aliens. Because we shared something human with beings who had never experienced anything like it," Lisa corrected. "Because we showed them that efficiency isn't the only way to live. That sometimes the best parts of life are the ones that serve no practical purpose except to make you happy." Carlos looked out at the food trucks, restaurants, and dining areas that now filled the station. Beings from across the galaxy worked together, ate together, and discovered new ways to experience the simple pleasure of a shared meal. "You know what the best part is?" he said finally. "They're not just copying human food anymore. They're creating their own versions, mixing their traditions with ours. That Velithian harmonic pizza isn't something humans ever could have imagined. The Clithian spiced nutrition paste actually tastes amazing. They're not becoming more human. They're becoming more themselves, just happier." As if to illustrate his point, a group of Luminians floated past the window, their energy forms flickering in patterns that Amy had learned to recognize as laughter. They were heading toward the ice cream station, where they would absorb frozen dairy energy while glowing with contentment. "Final question," Kelly said as they watched the alien ice cream enthusiasts. "Do we tell them about cake?" Lisa considered this seriously. Cake was more complex than ice cream. Cake involved celebrations, birthday traditions, sugar crashes, and the concept of dessert as a reward rather than necessity. "Let's give them another year to adjust to ice cream," she decided. "Then we'll introduce birthday parties." "Birthday parties," Carlos mused. "For species that don't age the same way humans do." "We'll figure it out," Amy called from the laboratory door, where she was preparing to explain frozen dairy concepts to energy beings. "We always do." Lisa remained at the window as her team dispersed to their various responsibilities. Below, the galaxy's first food court hummed with activity as billions of beings discovered that eating could be about more than survival. The Galactic Council's official report on the incident would eventually be filed under diplomatic cultural exchange. Unprecedented success. But Lisa preferred the handwritten note that Carlos had received from a young Clithian chef. "Thank you for teaching us that food tastes better when shared with friends." Outside, cargo ships continued to arrive with ingredients from across the galaxy. Each delivery brought new possibilities for cultural exchange, new combinations of flavors and traditions, new ways for different species to understand each other through the universal language of a good meal. The galaxy had learned to eat for pleasure, and it was hungry for more.